very grateful. Let me begin by saying that I'm very grateful to all of you for being here, sparing your time, coming from different parts of the world and of our country. And you all have shared your wisdom with us. And I am also very happy to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our research on yoga, the physiological effects and applications. When we talk about yoga research, one question, I'm always fond of saying this, and in a way it is continuous with the descriptions of Acharyaji. Who did the best research there ever was? Where's the best lab? Is it in India or is it somewhere else? And then if we think about it deeply, the best researchers there ever were the ancient sages of India. Why? Because yoga is essentially an experiential science. And very fortunately for us, the ancient sages have passed on not only their methodology very systematically, but their experiences so that we can research it in the laboratory today, passed on by word of mouth and by etchings on palm leaves, as you see in the slide here. Nonetheless, though it was researched thousands of years ago, present-day methodology is required. And as we saw in the elegant presentations of Dr. Satbir Khalsa, Dr. Reema Dada, and Dr. Camilla Vokapik yesterday, there are all kinds of techniques which look right from the overview of neuroimaging up to the level of the chromosome in the cell, which allow us to understand what is happening in a broad perspective to the body, quantitative methods. We also need qualitative methods, which are, in a way, older techniques, the experiential techniques of the ancient yogis. These could be one-to-one interviews with yoga practitioners, as well as large-scale surveys. So I'm going to give you one such example, which we did in Yoga Day 2016. Yoga Day now in India and many parts of the world has become a place and a time when people gather together in large numbers. So we said, why not use this random sample and take around 10,594 people and ask them a simple question which was never asked in India before. What is that question? This question was already asked in the US and Australia. The question is, what kind of person is most likely to practice yoga in terms of their age, their gender, and their education? And what is the reason they are most likely to practice yoga? So we said, let us do it for the first time in India. And we got very interesting answers. While in the US and in Australia, the typical profile of a yoga practitioner was a female, because race is important there, white, middle-aged, and very highly educated. In India, we got a different profile. Younger, 25 to 35 years of age, almost 50:50, male and female. So that's, I think, good. We should move towards that in all countries. Education, perhaps because they were younger in age, I'm not sure, they had 10 to 12 years of education as opposed to 17 years and above in the people in the US and Australia. And irrespective of the country, the primary reason why everyone was practicing yoga was for their health. So we need to have the broader vision all the time of yoga for something else, which was mentioned by our speakers. The reason people get into yoga is often health. That's a good beginning, and then go beyond. So now what am I going to cover in the next few minutes? I'm going to be brief. Physiological effects of just one yoga practice. Like this we have studied many in the last, 29, 32 years, I'm not sure. I started it right after my MBBS. And then applications of yoga across the lifespan, from children to adults to older persons. So let's see physiological effects. I'm emphasizing one particular practice, that is Anulom-Vilom pranayama, which I studied right as an MPhil student, alternate nostril yoga breathing. The fact that we shift between right and left nostril throughout the day is a well-known fact irrespective of yoga. So right nostril breathing associated with energizing, left nostril breathing associated with whenever we are calm. So if you were to check in the middle of the night, which we don't do when we are asleep, we'd be most likely breathing through the left nostril. If we are focusing on something, like on a talk, then we are breathing most often through the right nostril. Alternate nostril brings about a balance. We asked this question: can alternate nostril breathing increase alertness? And an increase in alertness, as you can see, stimulants, always is associated with a spurt of an increase in blood pressure. So can it increase alertness without increasing blood pressure? And we did a series of studies on alternate nostril breathing for fine motor skills, perception, and these are all equipment which cost less than 500 rupees. So anyone who's discouraged, if they don't have a big budget, get out there, start yoga. You don't need more than 500 rupees to do these studies, which were published in international journals. Fine motor skills, a paper and pencil test, that's all you need. Then a Purdue pegboard, you can make it by your local carpenter, costs about 200 rupees. And finally, tactile sense. This is a very simple thing, like different coins. A 1 rupee coin, a 2 rupee coin, a 5 rupee coin all feel different. So if you close the eyes of the person, can they make out the difference and put it into specific slots? So this is sensitivity of the fingers, very useful for people who have to do quick work, like in a bank, very useful for blind people, and I'll be talking about visual impairment. All these abilities increased after 18 minutes of alternate nostril breathing, and most important, their systolic, their diastolic, and their mean arterial pressure simultaneously recorded decreased. I can say now with a good degree of certainty that 18 minutes of alternate nostril breathing definitely reduces your blood pressure. So if any of you have hypertension, we've done this in hypertensives, we've done it in normotensives, please try this and reduce your medication or even come off it, but only after taking your physician's suggestion. So we conclude, Anulom-Vilom pranayama increases these abilities, and the systolic, the diastolic, and the mean blood pressure, that is the blood pressure across the cardiac cycle, significantly decrease. These are our publications in this area, and if you want any PDF, write to me, I'll send it to you. Hence we say that alternate nostril breathing brings about a balance between being alert and being restful. The alertful rest term, first coined by Robert Keith Wallace, Wilson, and Herbert Benson, so long ago in Harvard Medical School for transcendental meditation, is true for many yoga practices even today. Now, what about yoga in daily life? So we'll see across different ages, coming first to children. We did a randomized control trial in a school close to our organization. So this is where we are, right up at the north of India, Uttarakhand. Doon School was the school which cooperated very beautifully with us. We had 90 children randomized as two groups, a yoga group and a physical activity group. In a few minutes, I'll touch on the differences between them. They were assessed for their physical fitness, Eurofit fitness battery, cognitive skills, their emotional strength and self-esteem especially, and the teachers' reports about their behavior with their peers, with the teachers, their academic performance, punctuality, behavior in school, and so on. Baseline 3-month assessments. 45 children in each group. Many differences exist between yoga and physical exercise. I will mention just 3. The first one is awareness. Yoga should be always an internal journey. You can run on a treadmill. I'm sure many of you have seen people in a gym running on a treadmill and listening to music from an iPod or from somewhere else, or watching a TV. Have you seen that in a gym? You cannot do that for yoga. Yoga is all about closing your eyes and going inwards. An internal journey, being aware of every sensation as it happens in your body. This is the fundamental difference. Other differences are synchronizing movements with breath. And the third difference, which I'd like to highlight, you can say, okay, I'm going to squeeze in 10 minutes in the gym and go to work. You can't do that for yoga. The mental state has to be extremely calm before you enter yoga practice. So 3, awareness, breath, relaxation. What were the results? Were they different? Hardly any differences. Just one difference. So Eurofit fitness battery, no difference. Cognitive skills, no difference. Behavior, no difference. One difference was in their academic self-esteem in yoga group. Why is it so important? Each year we know in India, for those of you who are from outside India, after the school leaving certificate examinations, which are very competitive, we have a 24-hour suicide helpline, because students, if their marks are not up to the mark, maybe just 0.2% than they expect less, they'll commit suicide. This is the level of academic pressure on our students, and yoga can do a lot to alleviate it. We've also looked at children with other conditions, genetic conditions like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, an X-linked condition, very sad, because if you have a family, it'll be passed on to all the boys in the family. And in this 16-month, 6 months, over a year, follow-up study where we used both yoga and Ayurveda, we found that there was one family where 3 children were affected. Why is it so sad? By the age of 25, the 3 boys will be in a wheelchair, but before they are 30, they would be dead. You can imagine the pressure on the mother, you can imagine the pressure on the children. So yoga helps immensely in this condition, not to cure it, but to give a better quality of life as long as the child is alive, and to reduce the stress of the caregiver, who's most often the parents. We've also helped children in other areas. I would urge many of the youngsters here to take this area up. Very, very lovely area. We did a randomized controlled trial way back in the 1990s and reported it also more recently in 2014. Children who were verified as being completely blind by absence of activity in visual evoked potentials. Totally blind and extremely high levels of fear, both on polygraph measures as well as on psychological scales. Randomized 28 of them as 2 groups, and one group practiced yoga, the other group had 3 weeks of gardening, because children who are blind love the feeling of the soil. The yoga group particularly enjoyed chanting, and as you can see, they give very, very beautiful performances of music and dance. So you can use this as a way to introduce yoga to these lovely children who are special, truly special in the real sense. Sometimes children have other disadvantages, like if they have committed a crime, they may be in a remand home. Sometimes even if they come from a family which is fragmented, they are taken to a remand home. And if these children are not given proper rehab, they will come out as criminals. So yoga for a remand home was a RCT we conducted in 1997, and we've also reported it in 2014. Very important baseline study, follow-up at 6 months. Now, I'm coming to the end. Should yoga be only practice? Should it be asanas, pranayama? Should it be kriyas, bandhas, mudras? Do we need theory? So we had 300 people who were very stressed. We randomized them as 2 groups. One group was given theory alone, theory derived from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the Hatha Yoga texts, and the other group was given practice only. Of course, we had to take their consent for this, and it was just a 1-week trial. Both groups improved. 32% in the theory group, 64% in the practice group. What does it tell us? Combine the 2 for the best benefits. Ideally, practice, theory, and enough time for silence, introspection, meditation. So there are many conditions, as we all know now, which benefit through yoga. Some have been investigated by us. Many have been investigated by the eminent researchers on the stage and in the audience. What do we now need to take it forward? safety, practicing yoga in the correct way. We did a survey in Yoga Day 2018 in Rajasthan, Kota, where we actually looked at 12,000 people and asked them, have you experienced any negative effect with yoga practice? If so, mention what it is. Very interesting results are emerging. I hope that we can share them soon. Why is it so important to have safety? Because we want to make yoga practice available to everyone. Why? Yoga is the only way forward for world peace. Not specific to any one country, not specific to any one community. Beyond all bridges, beyond all confines, so that we can all be peaceful and live in harmony and homeostasis. Thank you very much.
Dr. Shirley Tellis, she has given you full life journey with yoga and empirical findings, right from childhood to senior age, which has become, by the way, WHO has rearranged the classification of stages of life, and they have put age of 50 to 65 as middle age. So seniors can be very happy with it. She has covered such a wide range that you would have to reflect, not to ask questions. So I would say this, that it doesn't require any summarizing, because she was so articulate, so specific, so scientific, so much spiritual, that we can save the time and reflect it and maybe ask her in very many ways. She's a great respondent. If you write to her, she responds within a day. Any scientific question, any reflective questions. We have to move to second speaker, and my co-chair will introduce him.
So now we have a presentation, and the speaker with us is Dr. S.R. Narahari, who is Director of Institute of Applied Dermatology from Kerala, India. He is Director of Institute of Applied Dermatology, and he pioneered development of integrative treatment protocol for lymphedema and clinical methods for integrating modern dermatology with Ayurvedic dermatology and yoga. He has won 3 international awards for his work on lymphedema. He has 78 scientific publications, 10 chapters in books, and 37 international papers. He collaborates with 3 universities and 3 institutions. IAD hosts the Center for Integrated Medicine and Public Health of Government of Kerala. A big round of applause for the speaker, Shri S.R. Narahari.
First of all, I want to thank Dr. Shirley for inviting me, and I'm always happy to come here because I learn a lot of things on yoga from Dr. Shirley. Dignitaries on the dais, dear friends, and the respected yoga gurus and the audience. Now, we began on lymphedema treatment in 2002, and my presentation is on how we have used asanas. A lot of you are thinking about the meditation, yoga and all that. We looked at yoga as exercise. Whether yoga can be used as therapy is being discussed yesterday as a part of physical and mental well-being, improve the posture and joint related issues in orthopedics, psychiatric illness, yoga as standalone intervention, and as part of integrated medicine. Yes, they said yes, but many of the allopathists say no. It cannot be used. They say not now. It's because they say there are studies which say there are no significant results. And then some of the studies say that effective in managing symptoms alone. And some says it's self-motivation and so on. So allopathists are little skeptical. If there are 10 probably professors from AIIMS and South India, if you get professors, a lot of fight would have happened here, and probably you knew it before. So allopathists are not always happy that yoga works well. But then there was a different professor in Oxford called Professor Terence Rayon. I met him in January 2002 in the World Ayurveda Congress, and he published in 2003 that yoga asana for lymphedema would be useful. That's in the File Area Journal, he published it, and then we followed it up to implement what he thought, and under his mentorship, we started working. For lymphatic filariasis, because it requires a low-cost treatment, because in India, especially in India, lymphatic filariasis, or hati pav in English it is known as, is the disease of the poor. There are 2.5 crores of population in this country which affects, and they can't afford treatment. So there are no pharmaceutical industry interested, because the patients can't even buy the medicines. That poor they are. Absolutely, there are no government programs. So we thought, why not use yoga, which is self-medication, can be used for lymphatic filariasis, because India harbors the world's 1/3 of the patient load. When there is a stretch happens, the lymph which is in the dermis, which gets pushed through the precollectors into the lymphatic dermis, can get into any of the lymph nodes here. See, all that dots you see, they are the lymph nodes. Very importantly, most of the lymph is in the surface of the body. Very little of the lymph and lymphatic network is there around the organs and the deepest tissue. You can see that the major arteries have very little number of lymph nodes. So when the dermal stretch happens, the lymph which gets into the dermal plexus can move in any of the skin and get into any of the lymph nodes across described here. So again, the joint movements and muscle movements are very useful in draining the lymph. So activation of the muscles and the joints. So you can see that is happening in the Tadasana. Peter Mortimer, way back in 1990 in Oxford, proved that there's a radioisotope clearance from the lymphatics happens for the very simple amplitude movements of the ankle. So we looked at that literature and we adopted Gulfa Chakrasana and Gulfa Namanasana. Gulfa is ankle, Chakra is rotatory movement. Asana, we started moving it, always coordinated with breathing. So we thought if there are some of the evidences like that, we might not use that thing. So that is the Gulfa Chakrasana, and Bhujangasana also we adopted, because Bhujangasana creates a negative pressure with the inspiration. There is a stretching in Bhujangasana and there is a lifting of the limb in Bhujangasana. So this is how we thought it works in lymphatics. Now let me talk about how respiration and lymph drainage can happen. What all have in the MBBS studied the Guyton, the physiology book of Guyton. So inspiration says, Guyton, textbook of physiology, says there's an intrathoracic pressure reduced, lymph drains into the venous system during that time, and emptying of the thoracic duct happens into the lymph major veins. So deep breathing facilitates the lymph drainage because expiration increases the intrathoracic pressure and the lymph flows from the extremities to the center. This is again Terence Rayon's work. Now, we are saying that pranayama simulates the artificial respiration, because artificial respiration essentially is this, because expiration is induced by positive pressure around the chest and inspiration by the negative pressure. Our pranayama is doing the same thing. So we thought it's probably one of the evidences of the artificial respiration which is coming to pranayama. And normal breathing may not have so much of a suction effect as in the deep breathing. So we have adopted the pranayama because we need a suction effect for lymph drainage. So this is the series of asanas. It is there in the website, you can always get it. This is the sequence of asana we adopted. I can send the papers anyway if you want. Then we also developed the breast cancer related lymphedema. So that was a poor man's disease. This is the people are doing a lot of research because patients can pay for this. So in the breast cancer related lymphedema, you can also see about 4 months how it responded to the treatment. So breast cancer related treatment has some requirements like mobilizing the upper limb, strengthening the shoulder girdle muscles, reducing the fibrosis of the XLA, and achieving the lymph nodes. here, asana that strengthens the shoulder girdle muscles we have adapted. So that is the Rajyakarshasana is one the patient is doing that exercise. You can see this Rajyakarshasana, there's a lot of movement there. And then the Kastasana was also. So then there's a need to do the cervical lymph node drainage, which has to happen. And therapists are not available, doctors are not able in the villages, so forget the therapist. So we adopted this Griva Sanchalana asana because there's a movement which happens. Here all of you know yoga, so I'm not demonstrating that. But then there's a contraindication is the patient having vertigo or cervical spondylitis can't use this. Some contradictions are there. So Griva Sanchalana we used. So this is how we measure the lymph node, testing the lymphedema of the skin. Using the caliper is difficult here because they don't stand there always. And this is the list of yoga exercises for upper limb lymphedema. And then there are many structural deformities which these patients have, the lymphedema patients have. Not only that the limb, they have the bunion, talar bunion, hammer toe, and so many other structural deformities they have. So it is very difficult for them to walk and do the exercises and all that. So we adopted certain more yogasana to do the correction of the gait, to achieve the gait correction. So the problem here is the flat foot. For that we used Padanguli Namana and Gulfa Namana. There was a deep muscle stimulation, increases the movement of the torso, metatarsal and metatarsophalangeal joints. So that is how flat foot slowly improved in these patients. And these patients have Jenu Varam, and for that also we used Tadasana. The outer rotation of the knee and the hammer toe deformity could be corrected with that. So then all lymphedema patients are not able to do the yoga immediately because it's so difficult, they can't move. So then we have to adopt alternate yoga positions for those who are unable to perform yoga. For upper limb, for example, Gomukhasana, they can't bring the hands together. They can't bring the hands together. So we gave a rope there and then asked them to slowly put the force so that they can clasp the hand later. For example, Manibandha Namana, they can't hold this limb like that for a long time. So initially we asked them to fold their knees and support their hand. Slowly as the lymphedema improved, the muscle started getting better, strength improved, they were able to hold it. Or home caretaker assisted, because that difficult to limb. You can see on the left side how difficult for a patient to lift the limb. And we have to give that support to lift the limb. And these are the alternate yogasana positions we adopted for those patients with obesity and all this. Eventually, they improve with these kinds of exercises. And quickly going through some of the responses we got before and after in 6 months, in 21 days, and in 30 days. And we all last 15 years we are doing this program. We have treated about 4,000 patients. We all have put it on the electron medical records system. And even the yoga also we have put into the electron medical system. All 15 years this is a uniform response we are getting. Then the next program which we have not yet published, currently we have just completed the study, is on the atopic dermatitis. Atopic disorders. Now, atopic disorders is another dermatological condition, very difficult to treat. And it goes into atopic cycle. The patient, have you heard of people sneezing early in the morning? Yes, that is called allergic rhinitis. You have bronchial asthma. All people with great difficulty. Children each early morning, the entire body is with eczema, atopic dermatitis. And some patients do this always. Some people always they do. This is allergic conjunctivitis. So allergic rhinitis, allergic conjunctivitis, bronchial asthma, and atopic dermatitis are the 4 diseases which are on the rise, especially in India. So we have used yoga for them, and as objective evidence we have taken the peak expiratory flow and the spirometric analysis. And this baseline data we have, then we have given the yoga training to all of them We have taken their telephone numbers. Now we are following up and trying to do an epidemiological study for next 5 years. So we want to know whether yoga breaks the atopic march. And if it happens, this would be another gift to the world, because atopic dermatitis is a major problem in a developed country. It's a major problem in a developed country. So this is the protocol we have used for the atopic march study. In Indian scenario, we speak and we come from vilayat places, government, tertiary hospitals and all that. There are no doctors, therapists in the villages. A few filarious treatment centers. Patients are poor, isolated in endemic villages. Self-care is the easily available option. And there are large number of filial lymphodemas also. So we thought yoga is simple, it doesn't need any money. So initially we thought as doctors, yoga as for a patient's, poor patient. Now we know that yoga is totally different. But when we began, we thought at least as a low-cost measure. Now we know that even the richest man will give money to achieve this, get that. Thank you very much.